Greetings of the Spirit from the island of Catalina. From all outward appearances, it would seem that this message is coming to you from a little island in the Pacific. But as I dwell in meditation, the mists of this world begin to dissolve, and truthfully, I feel very close to you, nearer than hands and feet, as if we were standing together in the same room, looking at each other, and could touch each other, see each other, exchange thoughts and ideas together. The symbolism of space, land, and ocean is that oneness is always present regardless of all physical appearances. And if you feel this now as I do, you will understand why we are standing in the one light. The same one light has gone before us and has prepared the way in Catalina for the seminar in April. Everything has fallen into place. The dates are now firm. The seminar begins on the night of Friday, April 11, continues through Saturday, and ends on Sunday, April the 13th. That's April 11, 12, and 13, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, so that you can get home if you wish on Sunday evening. Of course, this is a very picturesque island with many things to do, and many of you might consider planning a few extra days here, either before or after the seminar. And this time, inasmuch as I will be here, I'll be very happy to see any of you personally, which I was not able to do in Boulder Creek. Announcements are going to the printer very shortly, in a day or two. And I think you should have printed announcements about this, how to get here, and all of the relevant details somewhere near the 15th or 20th of this month, January, which should give you ample time to make your plans and all your preparations. 1975. It's a nice round number with a message for us. But strangely, the message never seems to come as we would expect it. I wanted to do this tape in November, and then in December. Something wouldn't let me. And then one day, on Christmas morning, something happened. Not here. But something happened in Australia. And in a strange way, it became the springboard for the message. It happened on Christmas morning in the city of Darwin, Australia. Just the very night before Christmas Eve, the entire city had enjoyed the holiday glow. Children were singing their Christmas carols. Everybody was toasting the coming New Year. They were all optimistic about their future. And of course, there were many who were thanking God for the blessings they had received. But the very next morning, before the Christmas bells could peal out, Santa Claus delivered a strange gift to the people of Darwin, Australia. A cyclone. It roared through the city at 165 miles per hour. Everything in front of it was sheared off the ground. There was nothing left that was over 2 feet high. The damage was total. 90% of the city was leveled to the ground. Thousands of children and women had to be evacuated. The city was unsafe to live in. There was no water supply. Power was cut off. Over 20,000 homes were demolished. And while the rescue workers tried to salvage something, a fierce rain and a fierce wind prevented their efforts. Cars were literally lifted off the ground. Ships in the harbor were capsized. The people in them never heard from again. That was on Christmas Day, 1974. We think for a moment about those people in Darwin. Were they criminals? Had they in some way violated divine law more than anyone else in this world? Were they corrupt? Were they being punished? But the simple fact is that they were as God-loving and as hard-working as people in any city of the world. They had Bibles. They went to church. They were good people. And what happened in Darwin? Why? And what is the message in it for us? Suppose we find that our faith in God is no greater than theirs. Does that not indicate that we too could be stricken by some kind of disaster like Darwin? Are there not 5,000 cities in this world that are just as vulnerable? Have not many cities already been stricken by floods and diseases, and hurricanes and tornadoes? What is the mistake that we are all making? Can it be corrected? Is there some method for preventing disaster from striking a city? If you and I have been living in Darwin when this devastation occurred, and particularly if you were a woman who had been separated from your husband and had to take your child to another city, what would you be thinking now, just a few weeks after the great destruction? You'd be wondering where your husband is, what he's doing, if he survived, when you will see him again. You'd be wondering if your children are going to have a father. And ultimately you might come to the point of saying, we will rebuild our city, even bigger and greater than before. But is that the answer? That is precisely what the city of Darwin, Australia, is now doing. They are picking up the pieces and they are rebuilding their city. But you see, courage alone, even faith in God, is not enough. Especially if that faith is in a God who permits cities to be destroyed, lives to be shattered, families to be separated, many to die. That isn't faith. Faith in such a God is a lack of faith. It's the absence of faith in the real God. It's hopelessness and helplessness. It's clinging to a God who does not exist. This type of faith is a spiritual vacuum, a blindness, a total ignorance about God. To rebuild a city is not enough. We have to rebuild our knowledge of God. We must rebuild our spiritual consciousness before we can rebuild a city that will endure. And if we do not, tragedy continues to strike, always wearing its new disguise. And finally, we are forced to come to the great secret of life. You've been practicing it all month. Omnipresence. Without the knowledge of omnipresence, you are a city that can be stricken by anything in the material world. Darwin is but an example. It could have been any city in the universe. The same way that Darwin is now reacting to their catastrophe is precisely the way mankind has reacted to war, to disease, and to famine, and to all of the chaos in the world. We pull together the shattered remnants of our lives and we return to the identical consciousness. And that's today the same thing. That's why we're pausing, not passing by, not permitting ourselves to shrug off the Darwin incident as just another place in the globe. Because there's a mighty lesson to be learned from that catastrophe. And it's a lesson that applies to conditions in every city of the world. The people of Darwin are going to repeat their mistake. And they're going to repeat it because they do not know what their mistake is. And 5,000 other cities, just like Darwin, have been making that same mistake for many, many years. And they are going to continue making that same mistake. But you and I, with a spiritual consciousness, will not make that mistake if we now learn what the mistake is, if we identify it, correct it, and eliminate it from our consciousness. And when we have done that, it is our function to demonstrate that it is possible for every city in the world to live without making that mistake. Now that's where the real courage is going to be shown. You and I must cross-examine ourselves mercilessly until we finally confess that there are no cyclones in the government of God. And we must admit to ourselves that as long as we are experiencing cyclones, or any disease, any war, any problem, we are living outside the government of God. And that's where we will remain until we face the only truth that can make us free. There is no inflation or deflation in God. And if we experience one or the other, we must admit that we are not under God's government. Every human crisis tells us that God is not in the human scene. And still there are many people who would rather face a cyclone than come face to face with this simple truth. They'd rather rebuild their houses than rebuild their consciousness, because it's much easier to say that God is punishing us for our sins, or to say Johnny was lucky. He escaped with his life, while forgetting the hundreds and thousands who do not escape. The city of Darwin was not punished by God. Africa is not being punished with famine. India is not being punished with disease. Japan was not punished with atom bombs. And the United States is not being punished with inflation. God has never punished the human race. God has never smashed hospitals or cut off the water supply. The moment we pin the cause of evil on God, or even on the devil, we're eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We're in duality. We're perpetuating the lie about God. And we're living under the false belief that there are two creators. A good creator, a bad creator. Now let's very carefully see this. The moment we accept evil as a happening, we are inviting every evil in the world to attack us. We're being trapped by the world mind into a false identity. And this false identity is totally at the mercy of appearances, because it does not know that God is the individual selfhood of that which we call man. False identity does not know omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. It does not know that God is the only being, the only cause, the only action. That is but half the truth. We've come now to a landmark in our work where each of us knows, or should know, that we are not living as human beings in the world of God's creation. We are living in a mentally recreated universe. And so we have been developing a capacity to look at any storm not through the human mind, but through the Christ mind, which says, "Be still," is on. But now we must learn a truth that is still unknown to most persons in the world, in spite of their sincere, dedicated efforts to know God aright. And this truth is the underlying truth of all Scripture, a truth taught by all the masters who walked upon this earth. If you fulfill this one truth, you walk in the government of God, under grace, free of death, enjoying your eternal life. Ignore it, and you remain in the recreated universe of cyclones, heart attacks, and old age, outside divine government. Everyone who hears this truth has to measure where they are by whether they can accept it or not. The truth is this: your function on earth is to make the Word flesh. If everything you do is geared to that purpose, you will succeed. You were told to be reborn of the Spirit, and that means to make the Word flesh. And so in 1975, 76, and every year thereafter, in this lifespan or in every lifespan that you live, that is your purpose. To make your physical form less and less important until you know that you dwell only in divine flesh. The mistake made in Darwin, the mistake made in cities throughout the world, the mistake being made every day, is that man is not trying to make the Word flesh. And he does not do that because he believes that he has something much more important to do. But we have nothing more important to do. That is our goal and our purpose. Those who have another goal and another purpose may continue to thank the Lord for His blessings on Christmas Eve and find that their universe is blown to bits on Christmas morning. God has given us one assignment. And we cannot afford any longer to say, I have something more important to do. We cannot even say, but I have human responsibilities. Family to take care of, incomes to earn, mouths to feed, bodies to clothe, rent to pay, business to run. Oh no. That's the human picture. Mankind is trapped in it. Science and religion are just as trapped as the rest of mankind. All have something more important to do than what God tells them to do. Be ye reborn of the Spirit. Make the Word flesh. And so, while they continue living in the valley of the shadow of death, trapped in human responsibilities, trying to fulfill them, they merely are signing their own death warrant. Certainly we have human responsibilities. Until we learn that all we have are divine responsibilities. It is the divine will that you be perfect as your Father which art in heaven. That is much more than fulfilling human responsibilities, isn't it? Human flesh can never be perfect as the Father. Face that. Only divine flesh can be perfect. It is your Father's will that you make the Word flesh, that you overcome your mortal sense of selfhood, that your flesh be divine. We cannot ignore that. To demonstrate the function of man on earth, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. That was a teaching that only when you are the Word made flesh can you experience the perfect government of God. Good humanhood is not the way. Not through good human motives, not through philanthropy, not through human prayer, not through singing hymns or shouting hallelujahs, not even through accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. You, Y-O-U, you must step out of your three-dimensional body, out of your material world. You must put on your white raiment, your spiritual consciousness. You must walk now in the kingdom of your soul, in your divine body of soul, for that is divine flesh. It is the Word made flesh, and it alone expresses the will of God. Then under the government of God, your divine responsibilities are performed, and your so-called human responsibilities are also performed, all by grace. Anything less is a state of duality, and it is doomed to fall short of the mark, holding you a prisoner within the world mind. These are not new words. The words that you're hearing now have been spoken on earth for more than 3,000 years. They're in your Bible. They were in the same Bibles that were scattered to the winds in Darwin when 20,000 homes were demolished this past Christmas. These words are in billions of Bibles throughout the world. And they've always been giving us the same message that our eyes refuse to see. You are here to make the Word flesh. The mortal flesh of man is unable to hear the divine Word. And so it continues, going up and down and seesawing between good and evil, suffering the same disasters of the human flesh, and always looking to human leaders to find solutions. And of course, our religious leaders would be the logical ones to respond and to point the way. But they are hampered by the fact that they too are not trying to make the Word flesh. And so we find churches all over the world meeting with goodwill and social grace and all of the nice human instincts that we like to see in people, but no opportunity to experience truth. It would be a marvelous thing if one day, one Sunday of the year could be set aside in every church in the world for truth. We could call it Truth Day. It would be quite a novelty. A minister, for example, might get up and say, today I would like to tell you something that I've not been able to tell you before, something called truth. I would like to tell you that Jonah was not really swallowed in a whale. And I would like to tell you that Noah never built an ark, and he never was in a great deluge. That might make a very interesting sermon. Just think if billions of Christians learned the truth, or if the people of Darwin had heard before the cyclone struck their city about Noah and his ark and had learned that he had not really built an ark, but he had built a spiritual consciousness. And if they had learned the complete story there, would not have 10 righteous men arisen to save that city? Suppose they had been taught something different than a fairy tale. Is it possible that the writer of the story of Noah had gone through a tremendous inner experience, a change of consciousness, a transition while in the flesh from mortal to divine, and that he was now explaining this inner journey using words, numbers, objects, and outer events as symbols of the cataclysmic experience that he had undergone within his own being. Is it possible that in the story of Noah's Ark we find all the divine instructions for us to make the same journey within? And of course, once we have caught this vision, we can see that the writer of the story, presumably Moses, undoubtedly aided by a few others who had a spiritual consciousness, were not recording an actual voyage or the burial of the earth under the sea, but they were teaching us that there are two arcs. The human life is one arc, and the spiritual life is the other arc. And they wanted us to get out of the arc that could not travel through cosmic hypnotism into the arc that could. It was not history they were reporting. It was not a factual story. It was a beautiful divine teaching, clothed in an allegory. You know, it seems quite absurd that up to this point religion has accepted it as a factual story, and that archaeologists are even looking for Noah's Ark. Every now and then you hear somebody say, we have found Noah's Ark, the original one. We have found a remnant of the gopher wood. And, oh, Lord. It's almost unbelievable that we could have spent 3,000 years of ignorance when just a simple analysis would tell us that nothing like that could have happened. There wasn't enough space on the size of the ship that he was instructed to build to house 2 of every animal in the world. He didn't have time to collect every animal in the world. You couldn't take every animal in the world into one climate when so many animals require different climates. Some of the insects he'd have to gather would have short lives and they'd long die before the voyage was over. Some of the birds. How do you get enough food onto an ark for 150 days without refrigeration? And have that food suitable for every different type of animal. Insect, bird, fowl. There are so many other specific indications that we'll come to in a moment, all showing us that Moses wanted us to know that there is another way of life. He was painting the story that men could not understand, the voyage from the knowledge of mortality to the knowledge of immortality. A voyage in consciousness which brings you to heaven here now through the ark of Christ. Be sure of this, Noah never built a physical ark to weather the universal flood. The universal flood is cosmic hypnotism. And I think we had better look at this story of Noah, because in it we find the answer to all the Darwins of the world. Let's take a second to regather spiritually in the quiet. Yes, it seems perfectly clear that Moses, in presenting the story of Noah, was teaching us that the Word must be made flesh. He was revealing the greatest secret there is in the Bible. That your real ark is your soul body. Which can never die and which can never be drowned in cosmic hypnotism. I'm reminded of Henry Kaiser. You remember his record during the war, building ships so quickly. I'm quite sure that Kaiser never built a ship as quickly as Noah built his ark. And Kaiser had all the material to do it with, manpower and the tool power, the electrical power, mass production methods. But Noah was not building that kind of a ship. He didn't need any power tools. He didn't even need a hammer and nails. Noah was building a ship not made with hands. His ship was invisible. The ark of Christhood. Divine soul body. And with that divine soul body, he sailed untouched through the false powers of our material world. That's what Moses wanted us to know we can do and must do. If religion had been awake, all it had to do was just open its inner eye a little bit, and it would have realized that, well, I don't think Frank Buck could have brought all those animals into the ark. How could Noah persuade the animals to come with him? I mean, did he just walk up to a male and female gorilla and say, follow me into the ark? We're going on a little voyage. Did he set mouse traps for mice and bear traps for bear? Did he invite hot weather animals and cold weather animals? Did he invite lions and lambs? Did he stock up on special foods to cover the individual needs of every animal, every insect, every bird? And did he have transportation to go to the ends of the earth to find two of everything? 2 caterpillars, male and female, 2 giraffes, male and female, 2 penguins, male and female, 2 geese, 2 butterflies, maybe 2 skunks. Did he have the facilities to ship them all back to his ark? Did he have the equipment and the manpower to build an ark that could house such a vast menagerie? I don't think the Queen Mary, ocean liner could have handled all of that. And you know the size of what he had, 300 cubits. We'll come to that. That's about 500 feet. 600 feet, maybe. Anyway, are you getting the point? If religion had given Moses credit for a brain and even a grain of sanity, the religions of the world would have had to say, this is not a factual event. It is an allegory. Moses is concealing an important message about God and man. And he's done it in a story form. Then the great truth might have dawned. The writer is using words and events to describe his own inner journey. Everything that happens outside to Noah is an inner event in the consciousness of the writer, brought into visibility so that we could understand that this is a journey we are all taking now. This knowledge would have opened the way for mankind to understand that the Ark of Noah is no longer to be considered a ship made of wood, but a ship made of spirit. The Word made flesh. Noah is moving from his false sense of mortality, materiality, physicality, to the correct knowledge of his identity as spirit, immortal. And he is learning that he is the omnipresent self. And as he lives in his omnipresent self, he becomes conscious of his soul body, which can never know disease, never know disaster, never know death. Instead of the world burying Noah, Noah's consciousness buries the world. It has taken us 3,000 years. And like Rip Van Winkle, we have been asleep, unaware that Noah's Ark and Christ walking on the water are the same demonstration. Both are demonstrating the Word made flesh, which is the secret of transition and of life under the government of God. And so here we are today, joined in the great project of being reborn of the Spirit, learning to reject every human concept. And that brings us down to the rejection of the human concept of material flesh. must be rejected as reality if you are to accept your divine body as a present reality. So you must know that beyond your sense awareness here and now, you have a divine body. And here and now, that divine body is functioning perfectly. And here and now, that divine body is unconfined to a moment in time or space. It is an omnipresent divine body. And you must accept your omnipresent divine body. And that's what you use to build your daily consciousness. Hour by hour and minute by minute, you must be aware of your omnipresent divine body. Till you actually feel the invisible substance of it. And then you're building the Ark of Noah. You're making the Word flesh. We are pinpointing your entire life to this project. And although this appears to be a very stringent method, everything else that avoids this concentrated effort is the mistake. To follow the Christ is to make the Word flesh. You do not follow a physical Christ. You do not walk behind him on the road gathering dust. You make the Word flesh. Follow my example. I am the way shower. That is your function on this earth and your only function. Your fulfillment of this function is the only way to know God aright, which is life eternal. For that is the true light, and as many as receive this light are given the power to be the sons of God. That's why in the story of Noah, God says to Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me. The end of all flesh. Of course, man wasn't prepared to accept the impact of that statement. Man had not yet awakened from the dream of fleshly matter, the illusion of the atom or the sleep of mortality. Make thee an ark, says God, and go forward. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it, within and without, with pitch. The end of all flesh is the end of mortality in your consciousness. It's the end of your material consciousness. It's a divine statement to each of us that we must be made divine flesh. We must recognize that we are divine flesh. The end of all flesh has come before me is the statement that you are divine flesh, and you must recognize that you are not material flesh. How? The pitch, the tar that is to be used within and without the ark is the knowledge of oneness. Fills all the gaps. It makes all parts of the vessel into one seamless whole, within and without. And so the end of all flesh is the end of all duality. The end of spirit and matter. The end of mortality and immortality. The end of God and man. The end of all flesh is recognition of divine identity. You see why Moses had to put this in an allegory? Even now it amazes us, even after all of our work with Joel. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. Well, a cubit is the length of your forearm, stopping at the ulna. And that's roughly 20 inches. So if there's 300 cubits for the length of the ship, 20 inches times 300, you got a 600-foot ark. I guess that's fooled a lot of people. They figured 600 feet of ark could hold two of everything in the universe, but it can't. As a matter of fact, if you take away the zeros, you begin to get the message of 300 cubits, 50 cubits, and 30 cubits. Add them up, 300, 50, and 30. But now take away the zeros, and you have 3, 5, and 3. That's a total of 11. And that means 11 disciples, 11 properties that you must develop to achieve your invisible temple, not made with hands. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. The window above is your soul. In 1 cubit is your soul's consciousness of oneness. And through this window of your soul, your 11 divine properties will be developed. You see the code? And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. Now, Judas, the 12th disciple, is the door on the side. And that's your mind, which conceives the false sense of mortal selfhood. Through this door will pass all false beliefs. And the last belief will be that you have a human body to preserve. And finally, Judas will go when human selfhood is abolished in your consciousness and the world mind is overcome. Then a new disciple or a new property will take the place of Judas, and this is the 12 divine properties now, becoming the one seamless ark of Christ, the Word made flesh. There it is, all of it. The lower, second, and third stories of the ark are the 3 heavens into which your soul must sail. These are also the 3 principles which govern the action of the ark. The 3 principles are known as the Holy Trinity, of course. But let's look at these 3 principles spiritually. The first principle is the will of God. The will of God is the Father. This divine will is infinite. It is omnipresent. And from this omnipresent will flows the mind of that will. And this mind of the will is the Son of God. This all-knowing mind is also infinite. And it is often referred to spiritually as the heart of God. The heart of God is the mind of God. In the heart of God, only in the heart of God do we find the will of God expressing. Only in the mind of God is the will of God expressing. It alone is capable of divine knowing. And from the will and the mind of God flow the Spirit of God, expressing the will of God. This is the ghost expressing the power and the wisdom of the Father and the Son. The Father then is the omnipresent will, the Son is the omnipresent knowing, and the ghost is the omnipresent power and the action. The 3 stories of your ark of spiritual consciousness. These three stories express the eternal Word of God. They're always functioning, right where you are, even now. And beside them, nothing else is functioning. And as you dwell consciously in the three principles, in the three stories of the ark, your window of the soul will develop your 12 divine properties through soul energy until, in you, as you, the Word is made flesh. Well, we're not ready to hoist anchor and sail away into the sunset, because I'm quite sure we wouldn't get too far beyond the shallow waters. We still have some passages to take aboard. We have to check our navigation instruments. And particularly, we have to wait for the Word from above. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters from the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. From under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. Mortality must go. We have learned that the will of God is infinite. The mind of God is infinite. The power of God is infinite. Now that doesn't leave room for any other will, any other mind, or any other power. It means that only the will of God is now functioning. And we have also been told that the will of God is to destroy all flesh wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. How shall we interpret that? Shall we walk by and wait for a cyclone to devastate our homes? Shall we continue to treat those words as if they were a fairy tale? Or shall we obey the command to stop accepting matter when it is the express will of God that all flesh must be destroyed? And so let's take a big step. If divine will has the power to enforce its will, do you think it has waited 3,000 years to destroy all flesh? You know better. Spirit is very gently veiling the truth from those who are not ready. But it is telling you, and it is telling me in soul language, that flesh does not exist. There is no material flesh. To destroy all flesh means to destroy the belief that flesh exists. It means to move consciously out of the sense of mortality, to consciously eliminate the belief that God created fleshly forms. For if you stand still in that belief, your ark cannot survive the flood. Belief in matter, belief in a material selfhood, makes survival impossible. We are being forced, if we are faithful to Spirit, to step up into our spiritual mansions now, to overcome human thought that flesh is real. For this alone opens the window above for the divine word to be revealed as our true flesh. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy son's wife with them. This is the spiritual journey within. Nobody's going to go into an ark. You're not going to take people into an ark with you. You're taking them into your consciousness, and you're making the word flesh by seeing that they too are divine. Take your sons and their wives, those closest to you, you must unsee the material selfhood. There were 7 persons that were to be brought into the ark of Noah's consciousness and yours, and they symbolize the entire human world of flesh. When you go through 7 levels of consciousness, the 4 physical and then the 3 spiritual, the Word will be made flesh. But it's not enough to know no man after the flesh. Everything material must be redeemed from the material appearance into its spiritual reality. Of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Now you know that's not material food to store in freezers and refrigerators. Spiritual food is divine thought. So we feed all matter with divine thought by accepting only invisible spiritual substance where the visible matter appears. We're redeeming our belief in the existence of flesh, whether it's male flesh or female flesh, so that in our ark of pure thought there is one spiritual being, even though 2 of each enter.